Hey retro gamers. Today on Smashing Bricks, we use the Force in Star Wars Jedi Knight II, Jedi Outcast. Hey, welcome back to Smashing Bricks, a retro gaming podcast. This is episode 29. My name is Eddie Inzauto, and today I'm joined once again by my jolly old chum, Kyle Stallock, who I normally say Stallock, but he says Stallock. Hey, Kyle, how's it going?
Either or, I don't care. It's 2024. Everything's burning. Let's not be too hung up on the details. I'm doing well. Thank you for having me on. It's always a pleasure.
Yeah, man, I love having you. And today, we're talking about something that relates to my typical sign-off of May the Nostalgia Be With You. We're going to be talking about a Star Wars game. Are you a big Star Wars fan?
That's a nuanced question and answer as well.
Are you an original trilogy fan?
Yeah, who isn't, right? Come on, they're perfect. I mean, you can sit there and nitpick them, but yeah, no, they're perfect. I can't wait to talk about this. When you brought up this game, I was kind of like, no, I don't really feel like playing that game again. But as I got into it, I really regained the sense of love for Star Wars that I had post Disney. Let me say it that way.
I see. Okay.
I like the original expanded universe, and I like where some characters went, and do not prefer where Disney took them.
Okay, that makes sense. So we're pre-Disney with this game, right?
This is very pre-Disney. At the time, there was only, I believe, one person that was like the overseer for all the lore in Star Wars. So generally, most of it in media was connected.
All right, so we're right in your wheelhouse, and we're playing Star Wars Jedi Knight II, Jedi Outcast. But what is this game? It's a interesting design, right? What is it about?
It is. It's a third-person and first-person shooter and lightsaber action game with a lot of story elements. It's a very linear, kind of. We can go into level design later, but generally a very linear action game.
Yeah, we got gun blasting, lightsaber twirling, high jump flipping, force powering. Very actiony, but also very first-person shootery in the beginning. It kind of does it. Does a switch. Is it a bait and switch or just a...
Yeah, I mean, it is and it isn't, because if you played the previous games, which I didn't, but I actually watched playthroughs of them before I watched this. Before I played this game again. There was actually like live action cutscenes and stuff in the other ones, but they were very much first person games and not very lightsaber driven. But this one had like the promise of lightsabers and the marketing campaign. So if you were an old fan, you kind of expected that first half. And if you're a new fan, I think you wanted more of the lightsaber. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, because we can talk about how good the game is later. But it's interesting how it speaks to people on multiple levels.
Okay. So you said that you had played it, right? Tell me about your prior relationship with this game.
Oh man, I love this game. I always played every game on hard. Because obviously I'm better than everybody. No, just because I like the challenge and it feels like more directly related to the narrative. I think you and I have had many conversations about this. If we haven't, we should have. But it's mainly about like, the struggle of having to go through what the character goes through. So I played that when I was a kid, and I really remember the experience, like Halo 2 legendary level of difficult. And I remember when I beat the game, it felt cool to beat this game because it was so difficult at the time, but also it was Star Wars. It was basically the best Star Wars game ever made at the time. And so I have very fond memories of this. When I was telling some friends I was replaying it, when people were seeing that I was playing it on Steam, they're like, oh my God, I remember that. So it was really a good point to reminisce about a really tentpole game in many ways with a lot of different people I don't usually talk to.
Nice. I never played it. I had zero even concept of what it was before I got into this, because this, I should have mentioned earlier, is a power-up episode as demanded by my Patreon patron, Ms. Muso. And that's why we're playing this game. So you can thank Ms. Muso for playing it, and I can thank Ms. Muso for getting me to play a game I've never played before. So that's my prior relationship.
Were you a fan of Star Wars when it came out, or why did you miss out on this? Because you played a lot, but it seems maybe you hated Star Wars. Is that it? You had no respect for it, Eddie?
As a kid, I did not watch Star Wars, the original trilogy, so I didn't have that built into my DNA. And I did engage with the prequel trilogy when it came out, and they were fine to me. Like, they were like okay movies, but I never had the Star Wars bug, which now we're kind of revealing that my sign off for this podcast is just bait for Star Wars fans. I'm sorry.
Pandering. No, I got wait, hold up. I got to ask you, how the hell didn't you see Star Wars?
I don't know. I didn't have friends who were super into it. I was more into like Arnold Schwarzenegger and Jean-Claude Van Damme and Steven Seagal and like best of the best. You know, the kung fu
Eric
action
Roberts,
fighty movies of the 80s.
Yeah.
And Rocky. I know you could see all those things, right? But it just didn't it just didn't happen for me. I don't know. Also, Indiana Jones. I wasn't an Indiana Jones kid either. I saw like Temple of Doom one time. I think I just missed out on something wonderful, you know?
There was like 4 things to watch at the time too. So it's funny that like you missed it. It's not like today when people could, you know, we have all these options and people go, have you seen this new series? I'm like, dude, I'm like 40 shows behind at this point. But back then it was like you had Star Wars on TNT every other weekend, it seemed like.
Yeah.
So, or TBS, or I can't remember what it was.
I've seen Spaceballs about 100 times.
Did you see Spaceballs before you saw Star Wars?
Yeah.
Okay, this is fun context for this. Okay, I thought I had no idea you didn't know this about Star Wars. All right, let's go. This is going to be a fun discussion.
Yeah, I think so. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the game, and then we'll get into like the game's history, and then we'll get into our experience. So this came out in 2002 for PC originally, March 28, 2002, in North America and Europe, followed by a Westlake Interactive port for Mac in October of the same year in North America, and then a GameCube and Xbox port in November, also in North America and Europe. And it apparently wasn't released in Japan. Could that be possible? I don't know.
That's weird. Wait. Yeah, I was just thinking, like, is it because of the consoles? But no, those consoles, I don't know.
It's weird. Anyway, the console ports were by Vicarious Visions, and the original game was developed by Raven Software. Now, Raven Software, for me, always kind of like sticks out in my head, and I say, I know something they did, and I liked it, but I'm not sure. But Raven Software is kind of a big name because they, in like 2000-something-ish, they got involved in Call of Duty, and they co-developed like the recent Warzone and Black Ops Cold War, and assisted on like 7 or 8 or 9 other Call of Duty games. But prior to that, they developed Heretic, Hexen. They made Soldier of Fortune, which I did play on my earliest computer and really enjoyed its ultra-violent animations. They made Quake 4, Singularity, which was another game that I got into. I thought it was really interesting. I like that one. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's Raven Software. Everybody knows Raven Software. I just had to put that in context for people who are not Call of Duty people. And
Vicarious Visions went on to do a lot of the Skylanders games. They were the second studio with Toys for Bob. I worked with them on it, so that's the only reason why I know that.
Oh. That makes sense. Yeah, I feel like they've done a lot of ports, particularly. Like they were like a port company also. Published by LucasArts in North America and Activision elsewhere. As far as some interesting names, the voice cast had Billy D. Williams in it, the original Lando Calrissian, and he played his main character. Yep. Well, his character, and the lead, named Kyle, interestingly enough, which I didn't know when I invited you on this podcast episode, voiced by Jeff Bennett, who I never heard of before, but he has done tons of voice work on He was Johnny Bravo. He had another one that was like kind of popular, but he's done tons of animated TV shows and films and stuff, and he was in a bunch of video games as well. So that was our lead. The music, I don't know that they had their own composer. I think it was all just taken from the franchise.
It sounds like a mix of it, to be honest, because it transitions from the classics to like a melody that I've never heard in Star Wars, but I'm not claiming to have known all of it, you know? So there might be some original stuff, but I can't really tell.
Okay.
It all seems very on point, like John Williams or John Williams-ish.
Yeah. What else? So it was built on id Tech 3, which is the Quake 3 Arena engine. Same, the same engine that a bunch of games at that time were built on. There goes my pen. So the game was announced in May of 2001, and by January 16, 2002, they had a website and they had a teaser in February, and it was ready for release on March 13th, and they brought it out at the end of March. After which, I didn't realize this, the SDK was released in April of that year with a level editor, a map compiler, a model viewer, a shader editor and viewer, and this game has had hundreds of mods made and shared online. That's pretty cool.
And that was one of the things that I don't know if I'm getting ahead of the thing here, but the lack of mod support and stuff is one of the reasons why historically people have poo-pooed the console versions, because there was such a robust mod community.
Yeah, that makes sense. Also, the console games were considered just worse in pretty much every way, I think, by all the reviewers at the time.
I was wondering why this plays so much better.
Yeah. What did you played it on Xbox in the beginning?
Yeah, I beat it on Xbox as a kid, and I don't remember the fidelity being here, or just because mouse and keyboard, like, man, it's so much different going through the battles with whether it's third person or even lightsabers.
Yeah.
It feels spastic as hell on PC, and I love it.
Yeah, we'll talk more about that.
Oh yeah.
In 2019, pretty recently, this was ported to the Switch, which I had no idea. That's pretty cool. I didn't have sales numbers, but I was trying to think also of contemporary titles, and one that came up because it actually won the best shooter on the GameCube from GameSpot was Time Splitters 2, which is interesting because the game reminds me a little bit of Time Splitters 2 and its predecessor GoldenEye.
I was gonna say Time Splitters 1.
Yeah, and Time Splitters 1, but you know what I mean. Like, it's in that family where the developers moved to the new companies. But yeah. So Time Splitters 2 was around the same time. What else was around this time? In the same kind of milieu of this game. Anything sticking out to you?
Memory isn't what it used to be. But I'm trying to think of, like, I was playing other games on the Xbox, like MotoGP and Fusion Frenzy and stuff like that too. But I think the closest thing for me was Halo, probably around that time.
Right. Okay, and I think that was slightly earlier.
Halo 1, I think, was around that time. It could have been, but that's what I related to on the console. Especially, you know what? There's some connections here to, like, a lot of the PS2 first-person shooters of that era, like Siphon Filter. I don't know why. I had, like, maybe it was the environments, but there was just a little bit of the Siphon Filter gameplay that just popped in my mind while I was playing this.
Yeah, that makes sense. Halo was 2001. I thought it was like a year before, and it was.
Got it.
Yeah. Another one is Metroid Prime was 2 days before the console release of this game, as like a first-person shooter game with like kind of adventure to it. Anyway, those are some contemporaries. As far
that
as
is a contrast, though.
Yeah, I mean, it's a contrast because they're different styles for sure. Like, this is definitely more of that classic, like, kind of PC shooter lineage, versus something experimental and different.
And that was like made for the GameCube, because that's so cool, because like visually they don't even look like they're from the same era, but yet they do. Wow, that's a good piece of information. I'm gonna be unpacking that a little bit.
Yeah, literally 2 days before, November 17th for Metroid Prime, November 19th for this on console.
Wow. And that game has like all those round curves, everything seems like so smooth and cohesive, and this is like just the blocky like square hand type of thing.
Yeah, that GameCube had like a magic smoothness to roundness, shadedness to it. I really like the GameCube look. It has its own kind of style. It's like they went totally opposite of what they had with the Nintendo 64.
Yeah. Oh god, that's funny.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry for pulling us on this tangent here.
No, it's fine. As far as reception, this was received pretty well. Metacritic has it at about 89% on PC, 81 on Xbox, and 75 on GameCube. Lots of good review scores. I see. I'm going to check out the PC ones. We had, 7 out of 10 from Eurogamer, one of the middling ones, but Game Informer 9.5, GamePro 4.5 out of 5, Game Revolution A-, GameSpot 9 out of 10, GameSpy 4 out of 5, GameZone 9.6 out of 10, IGN 9 out of 10. PC Gamer 91%, etc., etc. There was one notably awful review from XPlay, 2 out of 5, where they criticized like literally everything about it. Everything that was praised elsewhere, this reviewer just panned, which I thought was funny. I don't know.
You know, I can definitely see that. If like seriously, if someone picked the wrong difficulty, I think, and they didn't understand why it was difficult, I think a lot of people would be furious.
Yeah.
Like trying this on from like Padawan, I tried it on every difficulty for a little while, and it's a shockingly different experience. So that's interesting. I would, if I was the PR person working there, I've been like, what difficulty did this person play on? Can we get someone else? Or because I don't know if I agree with that. That's one of those reviews that you see like the reviewer did something wrong, because this is not like a 2 out of 5 game. We can say opinions up and down, but no, I'm sorry. That is so wrong.
Yeah, that's 40%.
No, that's just flat out.
Meanwhile, Game Trailers in 2007, a few years later, listed it as the #1 best Star Wars game ever made. It was nominated for Action Game of the Year at Computer Gaming World's 2002 awards, but that went to Medal of Honor Allied Assault instead, which was another one of the id Tech 3 games. It was also the runner-up for Best Shooter on GameCube, which went to Time Splitters 2. And it also got a nomination for Action Adventure Game on the computer at the 6th Annual Interactive Achievement Awards. So that's the reception. But what's our reception? We played it.
What do you think?
We totally played it. Well, we'll get to we'll watch this develop like a fine photograph. So let's talk about the game sort of structure, right? We start out as a first-person shooter, right? Basically what you would expect. We've got standard, mouse and keys on the PC, going around, exploring a base, opening doors, figuring out where you're going next, hitting panels to unlock progress, whatnot. So that's like one kind of game. And then later on, I feel like it changes. But let's start with the more shootery bits. What do you feel about the design of that and the gameplay feel?
It's so cool to run around in this environment and shoot these lasers and operate these guns. I love switching weapons, how it does like the Doom thing of the weapon just coming up, and these days it's like this whole animation of like taking things out. So that's one of the things I noticed right away was that. Second thing I noticed was how shooting a weapon, this is going to be an old reference for any of the old millennials like us here, it feels like I'm shooting out the steamroller in Austin Powers and the enemies are yelling at me to stop. It flies so slowly across the screen that when you're in a big fight with like it doesn't matter how many enemies, all you have to do, even on the highest difficulty, is circle strafe in one direction and no one will ever hit you. You can go through the biggest battles at the most key moments, and as long as you're not doing a stupid escort quest, you can just circle strafe everything. Now, the bad part about that is that your weapons are also shoot just as slowly, so that if someone's circle strafing you, you just get into this endless cycle of having to unload your entire clip just to hit them once, because
Yeah.
it's bizarre.
Yeah, so they had the classic sort of stormtroopers always miss you kind of thing.
Hmm.
For me, I was playing on Padawan, so we will have this
Yeah,
contrast in our experience, I'm sure.
that's
But
exactly it. Yeah.
they also had some like erratic AI behavior. They would basically like rubber band or like pinball, ping pong back and forth in like that weird and awkward and like sort of almost like horror movie animation of
Oh
that
yeah, they get
era,
bugged out.
just bugging back and forth. And it was really hard to hit them for me in some cases. They added auto aim, or at least like auto the bullets go in the right direction sort of thing on the consoles, but on the PC, man, I was like not succeeding very well trying to land my reticle on these guys and shoot at the right moment.
Dude, it's hard to play on PC or on anything. It's
Is it? I'm glad that you said it's difficult and was known to be difficult, because I found it
yeah,
difficult.
yeah. People, I was looking at this up. Like, am I missing something? Is my computer running at a different speed? Um, what's the issue going on here? And they're like, no, that's just how it is. Like the first half of the game, when you play it on the hardest difficulty, it's like Halo 2 legendary level, where if you turn a corner, a sniper out of nowhere will spin 180 degrees and hit you in the head with the most insane 400-yard sniper shot you've ever seen.
Oh,
So that
jeez.
happens, especially
That's
in Nar
awful.
Shaddaa. Yeah. Oh man.
Oh, yeah, on the
It-
streets.
on the streets, yeah, the snipers, that level is
Yeah.
terrible. And I looked it up, and people are like, yeah, once you get past that level and you start to become empowered, like, and like you become the monster or the creature that's stalking the children or whatever. um, so
Okay.
yeah, so I like Bespin. That's when the game turns around and you're like a badass, and the game gets more fun and everything like that. But yeah, I don't think the mechanics. I see what they were doing, and it was really fun. The whole lead up, exploring these universes, talking to Lando, even though he's like kind of phoning in his performance and everything, and he's making all these references. Like he says like it's not my fault, and all the little Star Wars things you expect Han or Lando to say, or scruffy looking nerf herder. I think they mentioned once. And it's like, okay, yeah, cool. It's a Star Wars reference. Why would you say it again? But you're doing the gameplay, and so those bits are pretty worth it to suffer through a lot of like the gameplay when it comes to the gunplay. Now, if you go into gameplay around level design, correct me if I'm wrong if you have this opinion too, but they did the thing that they did a lot in the past, which was they stretched the gameplay time out by having you backtrack a lot and doing really obtuse puzzles, not puzzles in like how do I solve this lock, but like how do I get to the next point of my journey is a puzzle.
Like,
And I
how
hate
do
that.
I see the thing in the environment that opens up my path forward? Like, how do I even observe what does the next thing?
Yeah.
That's what
Yeah.
I got. And I should clarify here for our listeners and probably reduce my street cred. That streets level is as far as I got this time. We're recording a little early in the cycle here because of
Yeah.
scheduling, but I only got to that street level because I got sniped out, just like you said, plenty of times, even on Padawan. I fell off of the catwalks too many times, and it's a classic PC style save system. You have to save yourself
Manually.
Like
Yeah.
it will not. If you forget to save, you're back at the beginning of the level, and the levels, if we're talking about the level design, they're long. They're like pretty drawn out. And so the first few levels in the base, I felt like that they took forever. You're so many hours into the game by the time you say that the game opens up and you become like the powerful thing in this world, right? Like it's
Yeah.
a bunch of hours. So if you're not committed to playing this game, I feel like they probably could have lost like half of their gamers like, we're done with this. I've
Yeah.
been playing for 5 hours. I think I know what the game's about. But
Yeah, you don't.
if it turns into something else after that, then I feel like they missed the opportunity to hook players.
They did. They absolutely. Like I said, the lightsabers are on the box. That's what you're sold
Yeah.
on. And you're like, and in the commercials, I remember it all being about lightsabers and lightsaber play and all this stuff. And then you get into that, and then plus, like, you want to feel empowered right away. Like, what is the consumer promise that you're driving forward for this game? It's like, be not Luke. You're like Han plus Luke with a lightsaber, and he's kind of gray Jedi, badass.
Yeah, that's
Sold.
true.
Sign me
It's
up.
a combo.
And then, yeah. Oh, that's totally who Kyle Katarn is. He's like the worst, like, awesome, amazing amalgamation in Star Wars.
Yeah.
But you go into the game and it does that, and the level design, it's so obtuse to find the next level, and I promise you they did that because they wanted to extend the time, because I saw walkthroughs of this. You can beat the game in about 4.5 hours.
Oh my god. That's weird. Yeah, they should have done that later in the game then, instead of in the first, second, and third levels.
Yep.
And actually, I was going to talk about, like you said, it's so obtuse. I got GoldenEye vibes. Like,
Oh yeah.
you press start, you go to your data pad, it has your objectives listed, you can go down, you can go through all your items, get descriptions of those, go through all your weapons, get descriptions, go through your force powers, like, it's got that sort of vibe to it. And the objectives really stood out to me, like, oh, it's going to be an objective-based first-person shooter single-player game. I love that. First of all, in what I played anyway, all the objectives are BS. Basically, the objectives are checked off like a minute before you finish the level. All of them.
Yeah, basically.
They're just that you don't like go through the level, find an objective that's obvious, consequential, and a turning point in your progress. It's you get to the end and like, oh yeah, you did these things, great. And then you take a step into the next area and the screen goes black and it shows you your end of the level stats. So that was interesting. I like the idea of putting those objectives in, but then they didn't actually space them out well. And also, everything that you had to interact with was inscrutable.
Yeah.
Like the buttons, I was constantly pressing buttons. First of all, I didn't know what they were doing half the time. They were like turning off a turret that I hadn't seen yet, turning off a turret that I had already destroyed, opening a door that I hadn't seen yet, opening a door that I've passed and forgotten about, doing something else that I just had no idea about. And the visual of them was camouflaged on some console on the wall that looked like everything else on the wall. There wasn't an obvious, like, oh, this is the special console that you're supposed to get to. Which, I don't know, maybe that's how it would be in real life, like you wouldn't know, but it's a video game. So you probably should.
This is me explaining everything to my wife last night. Like, why are you so frustrated and why are you laughing? I'm like, this game is just, it's obtuse. Like, there's so many quality of life things that we've gotten used to over the years. And like, highlighting of objects, but also like the simple design stuff of making sure that something stands out and make sure that people know what it does. There's this whole book called like the design of everyday things, and I recommend every single person on planet Earth read it because it's one of the most fascinating books I've ever read in my life. It just describes things like why is a doorknob created like or designed like it is, and good doorknobs, not people. You know which way you're supposed to turn it if you have to turn it, and which way you're supposed to push or pull. But when you go up to a door and you're like, okay, which one is it? Like this whole game feels like that, and you have to figure out what wall is like the doorknob or whatever. It's so bizarre. So you're pressing E on everything or use or whatever it is on every little thing, and then you activate something, and it's not like it's flashing. So you just wonder, like, was it like did they not think of that, or did people at the time not do that much in games, or are they doing it intentionally so that you have to find this stupid thing?
It's a mystery. It's a mystery to everyone.
Oh, frustrating.
Even in the
so
retro
mad.
pre-play, I recorded, I said, yeah, I feel like you spend a lot of time nose down activating everything in a row, like strafing along a wall full of consoles, just pressing the activate or waiting for that little hand to come up in the bottom left of the screen that tells you can activate. Also, you'll see something that you kind of recognize because it looks like some of the other things you had to activate in the past, and you'll go to activate it, or you'll use one of those, I don't know what they're called, but they're like little supply canisters. They look like garbage cans.
Oh, the green
Yeah,
and
yeah,
orange
they look
things.
a little bit like garbage cans,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
you re-up your shields, re-up your ammo, and you'll go to activate it, but the activation range is very small.
Yeah.
So I felt like I was there and I was going to activate it, and I wasn't focused on the little hand icon that comes up in the bottom left of the screen. And I would just, waste one of my canisters for health when I had full health. I would turn on
Same.
my night vision goggles on and off over and over. I was like, give me a little bit more range. Like I can see it. It's taking up the majority of my screen. My reticle's on it. This activation should work right now. But it didn't.
It's so funny that you bring up those things because I had to look them up because I was like, oh, what is this? When I click on it, it makes a funny sound. Who knows? And I just kept on going, and like you need every bit of shield and ammo. Like I was using the stun rod on Jedi Master, just circle strafings, like entire groups of enemies.
Oh, to save ammo?
To save ammo because
the classic Resident Evil strategy?
Yeah, exactly. I was doing that over and over again. Then I found out that I was like, wait a minute. Why are these two things like constantly? Why are they reusing this asset? And why are they always right before a big Wait a minute. I Googled it. I'm like, oh, that's what they are. Oh, that would have made the early game.
You needed to read the manual, man.
Well, okay.
You needed the manual that came with the game.
Again, but who reads the manual? And that's probably why some of the reviews are bad, because it's so obtuse in so many different things. Again, is it a quality of life generational thing, or did this game really miss that mark?
No, I think back then we would have read the manuals. I think in 2002 we were still reading instruction booklets before playing.
But with like the casual game.
Now nobody
we
does.
were dorks. We read that. Like I loved Street Fighter lore when I read the manual back in the day, and after that I read everything, and even the NES manuals and stuff. Fester's Quest, of course I read that manual. Okay, but like was the average gamer at the time going into the manual and doing that? And if you rented this at Blockbuster and you just got the disc,
that's true.
You know what I mean? Like this game doesn't communicate a lot to the player.
Yeah. I at first didn't realize when I was getting hit, and then I'd be like, oh, my shields have all gone down. What the heck? There was like not a lot of feedback, but then in like that cold room or in the electric floor area, the screen was flashing red, my character was breathing heavy, and there was knockback. And then later on I was getting shot and it was having feedback. I don't know if I just wasn't paying attention, but like you recognize when you're getting knockback or when the screen's flashing. So I don't know how I would have missed it.
That's one of the reasons why Halo was so popular back in the day, because the shield, like that you'd hear that shield break sound and you'd hear the sounding after it, and it was like the GTFO PTSD that we all have now.
Yeah. Oh, hide quick. Yeah. Get out of the line of fire right now.
Yeah, right now. Like, come on, what are you doing? But no, there's also the feedback that we appreciate these days. I think it really happened around the mid to late 2000s was when we started putting in weapon feedback when shots hit. And so whenever you play a shooter now, or most shooters, there's some kind of thing telling the gamer or the end user that certain bullets are hitting.
Like an impact animation or blood or them moving, like them
or
reacting.
Sound even.
Yeah.
Like
like a
thing.
A body.
Yeah, exactly.
A body sound. Well, that was in GoldenEye in 1997. All that stuff. Bloodstains on them.
Can't compare GoldenEye. If I shoot people in the butt, and to this day they don't always have a special animation for it. So GoldenEye was way ahead of its time.
Yeah, they need to jump up holding their butt when you hit them.
Did you do that as a kid?
What? Shoot people in the butt?
Yeah, and like and sit there and be like aiming down, and like your parents are probably watching in the background, or someone is, and they're like, "What's this kid doing?" And you're like,
Of course, I tried to hit them in every different body part just to see what would happen in that game. But we already did the GoldenEye episode. We know that
"Yeah, I
was
know.
an
I'm just
amazing ahead of
sorry."
its time. No, I brought it up, so it's my fault. Okay, but let's talk a little bit about the transition. We get a lightsaber. We decide that we're pissed off because our partner is killed, and we go back to the Jedi place and train a little bit and get our
Yeah.
lightsaber and get force powers, and then things change. So how's that work out for you?
Before I go to that, I just want to say the animations in this game for the gameplay add a lot to it. In the same way that GoldenEye did, when you shoot someone off a ledge, the stumble they do, or when someone is like walking up to you and they go, put your hands up as they're like shooting you, or like, can I see your ID?
You've already been shot. Let's see some ID. They fly off of ledges like you're throwing a boomerang. They're just spinning like starfish floating in the water.
Oh, totally. And it's like the less frames per second as people are in that animation, so just like it's all jank and stuff. But there's actually
they
a lot
do
of
that
different
to save on
animations.
memory, probably. Interesting.
Yeah, save on memory, because when you're doing the force powers later on, you're doing like entire groups of enemies and pushing them. Like that's probably a lot of resources. Like you can pull and push and do all kinds of things. Like once you get into the game and actually do the like lightning for force powers too, the game is awesome. Like I recommend shutting, like when you're done with this, going and finishing the game, because it's holds up really well. But the transition that you're talking about when you first get your lightsaber, it's the whole plot of the game happens very, very quickly. Even though the game itself, it can take a long time. Spoilers a little bit, but very early in the game, something happens to your partner that you've had for in the game universe 2 titles prior. She's your main person there, and something happens to her, so he goes on like his revenge mission, and a big part of that is him regaining his contact with the Force, which he shunned before. And so you go and meet Luke, who's running the Jedi Academy. Who when you first go to the academy, it's wonderful. You're walking around, a 3PO type protocol droid meets you, and it's very nostalgic, and you can see all these other things, and it feels a lot like Yavin 4 a little bit in the base on there, when they're all doing like the pre-Death Star run. So there's all these ships, but then you go and you're like, Luke is over here, and Kyle says, we're gonna go. I'm gonna find him on my own. Don't worry about it. So you're walking around and you're seeing Jedi train, and it's like there's this like uplifting, hopeful feeling that the Empire is gone, that something new. Luke is becoming this wonderful mentor, and some of the music is like the binary sunset when Luke is watching the sunset and thinking about his life.
Oh man, the nostalgia must be strong for Star Wars fans in those moments.
It is. It is, because it's like an actualization past the movies for something that's special to us gamers, that we get to see Luke be that person that he was hoping to be in that moment. So like when binary sunset triggers, like I was getting the legit Star Wars feels.
Nice.
And meeting him, and yeah,
I really like that part, walking through those platforms. There was like a glass tube, and you're looking down in the little arenas, and you see, that's what you're talking about with the Jedi's training.
Yeah.
That was really cool. But also, I was trying to figure out, where the hell am I supposed to go? Oh, through this black hole in the wall. Like, what? At the same time, like it's a binary thing.
And it's for that, it's frustrating. There's so much wonderful stuff happening in here that's like, they get Star Wars. Like you can put the hokey voice acting and video game plot aside, and I'm not, disparaging anyone. Budgets were budgets, and they had deadlines, and everyone did the best they could, but by today's standards, it's a little hokey, and the voice acting in some parts is pretty awful. But like the dinosaur guy, when he pops in as like the villain, I nearly spit out my drink at that point. It's like a cutscene. I'm like, okay, game's tough, and then I see this dinosaur go, Kyle Katarn, and you're like, oh my god.
Like, who are we friends or enemies? In the first minute, I was like, who is this guy?
Who's this dinosaur?
He looks like a character from the Super Mario Brothers movie, the original one.
He does, a Goomba. Yeah, one of the Goombas. Yeah. Like, except his head is like 3 times as big, but he does look like that. And so you get your butt kicked by him. Yeah, you get your butt kicked by him, and then it's like a fight you can't win. So it's like, oh my
Yeah.
god, I gotta get my lightsaber, and
Yeah, he's
it's
like, you're not good enough. You have no force powers. You're just a little chump.
he does this like '90s cartoon voice. It's like, you're not worth my time.
Yeah.
It's just really bad, man, and it's just cringe. But it's so wonderful when it hits those notes. It hits so hard, and that it makes it worth it. And that started for me really when I got to the Jedi Temple and Luke and
Mm.
the sunset. It clicked, and it's like, okay, I went through all this bullshit with this difficulty, but despite that Halo 2 nonsense, it's awesome. And then you start to get empowered, and you can just walk up to groups of enemies and deflect all their bullets and take them all out, and you're just like, you're
Yeah.
trapped in here with me now.
Yeah. I loved the defensive lightsaber play. I was like, oh man, if I just stand still, I blast back these laser bullets, and that's awesome. But how did you feel overall about the lightsaber combat? Was it very rewarding, like the actual hand-to-hand combat with the sword, the laser sword?
Gameplay wise, it's super rewarding.
I found it a little awkward. Like,
Oh, really?
the hitboxes weren't hitboxing for me. You know, it got a little bit better as I played, but like it was a little herky jerky trying to line
Yeah.
up and get those melee hits in. But I'm very used that's like my main genre is third person action melee, like Dark
Oh,
Souls,
yeah.
Elden Ring, that sort of thing.
Mhm.
That's kind of my main thing. And this felt like, oh, they're trying. But I could see how it gets better too, especially when you add in powers and just get better at the game. Because a lot of that is like using the camera as your way of directing your sword swings, your lightsaber swings.
Yeah.
But for you, it felt really good, like really exciting, really empowering.
To me, this is like the swordplay version of like Mario, because anybody can enjoy Mario,
Mhm.
but you see a master, run that little plumber around and the amazing jumps that they can do and all the quick things. Like this has a really high skill ceiling on it, and that's one of the reasons I think WoW was so popular for
Got
multiplayer.
it. But the
and
learning
mods.
curve might be a little steeper than your standard kind of third person action game.
It's a spastic game.
Yeah. That might be it. Yeah, you kind of need to have soft hands for it. Like soft thumbs. You can't be
You
too
do,
heavy
you do.
thumbed. Yeah.
No, and it's not realistic. Like a lot of the game, the beginning is like rooted in reality, and you understand like the weight of things, and everything
Mhm.
kind of makes sense. And then all of a sudden, you get a lightsaber, and it turns into a Saturday morning cartoon, and you
Yeah.
are chopping limbs off, jumping 20 feet in the air, whipping around 360. No scoping people. Like it just doesn't. It breaks the kind of like realism of it and the immersion. Excuse me, and the
Which
immersion
you
a little bit
want
of it.
though, because it's fantasy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you want like lived in Star Wars, the beginning half is more like that, and everything seems kind of like I'm playing in the Star Wars universe, and then it feels like a version of the cartoons.
Yeah, like it's like Rogue One at the beginning.
Yeah, don't get me started on the movies.
So at later on in the game, there are more direct head to head kind of Jedi battles. Is that
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
are those tough kind of hand to hand fights, one on one, or is it typically you're surrounded by goons as well as your main enemy?
Yeah, the stuff I fought is like a lot of one-on-one, and to me as a fighting game fan, I love it.
Yeah.
It's, when you play a fighting game, you expect that the computer has advantages that you don't, more damage on their moves, can anticipate yours a little bit better, can react to you, and this is no different, but it's still a fun, try to outthink the computer chess type thing. It's a blast, especially as you get more tools. It holds up really well, but that herky-jerky wackiness really, you see that more and more the harder or the more you apply yourself to the lightsaber play, and it's hilarious. Like I just don't want my wife to watch me. She's gonna laugh her ass up. Like, you're playing that.
Cartoony.
Yeah.
Okay. So what else? Are there any other notable parts or your favorite things that you want to bring up?
I got a bunch, man.
Oh yeah,
bring
let's
up my
hear some
notes
more
again
because
here.
you played a lot more than I did. So You
Yeah,
have
I had a lot of
you're
thoughts.
really like the knowledge base here, especially having beaten it on every difficulty level as a youth.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, all right. I got a bunch of notes here. So one thing I think I noticed about the weapons. So the most of the weapons are laser based, or projectile based, right?
Right.
I think why the sniper rifles are so annoying is because they're hit scan weapons. And if I get this right, hit scan is non-projectile based. So it's like from the point of exit to the point of entry, there's no like thing flying in the air. The computer or something saying this is going to hit here, and it just hits it.
It knows exactly what point in the 3D space
Yes.
what would have been a projectile is going to end up at, and it does it immediately.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Immediately. And so that's why that's so painful, because you can't dodge that.
Yeah. I don't
Yeah.
know. Yeah, it was frustrating.
It was so hard on hard that I told my wife, I'm like, I don't know if I can do this right now. I didn't want to let you down. So I had to beat that.
Oh. Oh man. Yeah, it was tough. But speaking of laser weapons, I noticed there's no reloading. You just have 300 rounds in your rifle to use. You never reload. How do you feel about that? I kind of like reloading.
So it gives the game a different flavor
Yeah.
than other games.
It's like Mega
So I
Man.
wanted to add this. Yeah, I wanted to add, that's true. There's a scene in the original Star Wars where Leia grabs the blaster out of
Mm-hmm.
Luke's hands, and then she fires it faster than Luke, and there's also a different sound effect. And
Yeah.
so at the time I wondered, how is she able to do that? Does she have a superpower? Like, how? No, she just used the secondary fire on that gun. And so when you're playing it, they use the same sound effect, so you get that badass like rapid fire thing.
Mm-hmm.
But also
I use that
when you have, like you
exclusively.
said, yeah, oh, that's the only thing I used. So when you it's so good because it's a
Mm-hmm.
volley of stuff,
Yeah.
and it's also fun. So you have a potential minigun right away in the game that unleashes a flurry of red projectiles that go across the screen, and you can hold that sucker down for like 2 solid minutes, it feels like.
That's
That's
amazing.
awesome. And I did that.
Yeah, that's
It's so much
incredible.
fun. Like, you get a minigun at level 1 or the first map. It's
Yeah.
fun, but it can't hit for shit. Some of the other stuff I had, I missed the gray of Star Wars.
The gray, like the art design?
Yeah, kind of like the aesthetic, like the 70s science fiction style that was very much like in the first and second ones. They were very like blocky,
Muted,
big
washed
button,
out.
gray, muted.
Yeah, you're right.
And now Star Wars as a brand is trying to be a lot of things, but and that's fine. That happens with every brand. But like, it was just kind of cool to see that this time in history, this was Star Wars. Star Wars had a very particular aesthetic, and this was it. And I kind of missed it.
Yeah.
I do miss like the kind of like developers still make games like this, but you won't see something like this for Star Wars unless it has like $150 million behind it.
Oh, yeah, now?
Yeah.
Yeah. They wouldn't just give this license out to do what you will with it, developer X. They will watch over it like a hawk and make sure you don't mess up their brand.
Yeah, and how does it fit into our shared universe of that year? Or,
Which is so interesting. The difference between now with licensed properties versus the origins of licensed property video games where they were the worst games.
Mm-hmm.
They would just give out the license like candy and then like not even pay attention.
Mm-hmm.
It's just video games. Let them play.
Yep.
Now it's serious business. That's such an interesting contrast to bring up.
Yeah, it is. And I was thinking about that a lot. Like, we won't get these like scrappy type games, and if this came and gone, and you touched on my exact next point, so great segue was nerd culture is very different. If this was bad, people have been like, I wish that Star Wars game was good, but it's not. That sucks. Anyway, let's go play something else. Now it's like people would be on message boards like demanding for like the developer to close for disrespecting it. People would
You're
be
so right.
people would be harassed. People's livelihoods would be threatened. There's a potential of like shooting up a place if it wasn't good. I mean, that's always there.
Oh my god, yeah. I remember seeing this webcomic. It was Mickey Mouse at the end of a few panels of Kylo Ren being a baby, and he looked out at the viewer saying, "It's you," talking to the fans, like crying
I remember
about.
that. That's
Yeah,
right.
that stays with
I
me
remember that one.
like forever. It's like, oh, that is so good.
But fortunately, we had a great game. I think that if they ever re-release this, I wouldn't want them to do a one to one. Like update it with the
Like a remake.
quality of life features. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, or remake it. Like update it with the quality of life features. Really try to realize the vision that they were going for without the trapping, and you'd have to add a lot to it, but without all the trappings of the era, because it's a game that's fun to play these days, but you definitely see a lot of the bad, ugly things. But as a Star Wars fan, pure nostalgia.
Yeah.
And I didn't feel like, if you don't play the other ones, like this isn't anything where you have to go, oh, I have to go back to the previous two titles. No, you can just jump right into this. They summarize everything pretty well, and it has the Star Wars crawl at the beginning and
Yeah.
all
I
that
love
stuff.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so with all that in mind, playing it now and seeing how it's aged and having that nostalgia, what do you think? Is it worth playing in 2024 and beyond? Because that's what we're here to do on Smashing Bricks. Every game we decide if it's a smash, if it's worth going back and playing, if it was worth going back for us, if it is worth going back for someone who we might recommend it to, or if it's not, is it a brick? So I think I know where you're going, but what's your final
Smash.
verdict? So
Smash.
fast. Smash.
Absolutely.
Smash.
There's like when you meet Lando, it kind of, that's your first indication that that they get the Star Wars thing. Like he says all the references, and yeah, it's tired, but it's also Lando saying the references. Okay, that's fun, and you get to hear Binary Sunset like over Luke and do all that. And it's funny to see the jank of how it was of the era. Just don't play it on the hardest setting. Do not do that.
Or even like the mediumist setting.
Just run through on like Padawan and do that, and you're good. It's so worth playing through if you're a fan of the OG Star Wars. I can't speak from a new fan. They might see the lore as being, I mean, it's not in continuity anymore. So
yeah,
I know a lot of people don't actually experience media if it's not in continuity now. But I don't know. I think it's worth playing again. Definitely.
Nice. So Smash from Kyle. As for
How about
me,
you?
I super appreciate all your perspective, your nostalgia, and your experience with it. I really enjoyed the conversation and the contrast between our experience with it. But I think it's going to be divisive. And I think we found in the two of us someone who it's going to really hit for and someone who it's really not going to hit for. And for me,
I love it.
I was like kind of into it in the beginning. I almost had a nostalgia for it, even though I had never played it, because of the vibe, like the feel, where it drew influence from and what it was conveying in its gameplay. But as I continued, it really kind of drained out of me, and I would come back to play it each time, and I'd be like, okay, yeah, let's get more of this game. And a short play session in, I was like, I'm kind of done with this, and I would stop, and I would have to come back to it fresh again later. And by the time I ended up quitting, I literally just, I didn't like run out of time. I just said, all right, I'm just done with this, and I can't really recommend this to anyone, considering my tastes and my experience, because some people might have my tastes and my experience. Also, I feel like there are just some games, even from that time, that I would just rather play, like Time Splitters 2, which beat it out for that award, or even something like PsyOps, the Mindgate Conspiracy, which had the same sort of, oh, it's a shooter, but it's also a Jedi Force Power game. So I just thought there was more other stuff that I would rather recommend, or I would prefer to go back to. So I'm gonna have to, I'm sorry, Ms. Muso, who requested this game, I'm gonna have to call it a brick again. This is the second Power Up episode I've called a brick. I'm such an idiot.
Heresy!
Oh no! But that is okay, because that
everything.
makes Star Wars Jedi Knight II, Jedi Outcast, a question block. So it's a try it and see. It's not a resounding yes. It's not an emphatic no. It's a question block. It might be for you. it might not be in 2024 and beyond. And speaking of differing opinions, I have a commentary from our listener, Ms. Muso, who requested this game. It's kind of lengthy. I have truncated it a bit. A little thing I've always liked in this game is the lightsaber popping and sizzling in the rain. The music is Star Wars, perfect, but you hear it a lot. The soundscape on the whole is not that varied, just a few character voices and effects that get the point across. The level design is tricky, there's a lot of puzzling out, and the game is not designed to give you any answers. You mostly have to stumble into it. Every stage introduces one new thing for you to do, but they're never explained. I was stuck on a level until I realized my jump ability had leveled up so I could jump higher. This is too much brute forcing in the gameplay. One late game level starts with Kyle saying stealth is the way to go here, but stealthy tactics have never come up before. What follows is a particularly tedious stealth mission of avoiding patrols when you haven't really had a chance to drill the skill yet. Another annoyance in the game design were the switches. Every level has a different looking switch, which makes sense from a world design aspect, but terrible for game design. The level design can also be a little bit of a maze. I used no walkthrough help, but I was backtracking a lot to figure out where I needed to go. I didn't enjoy the constant feeling of, well, I'm lost again. Where this game wins is on story. The missions play out the story, which is probably why I like coming back to this game. Kyle is a compelling character. The only difference here is there is no player choice in that arc. You don't make the decisions. It's a compellingly linear story with not so linear gameplay that is worth revisiting again. So it sounds like Ms. Muso's giving it a smash, and it makes sense because she picked the game. Thanks, Ms. Muso. So that's it. Thanks everybody for listening and for playing along with us if you did. And I'd like to ask you to do me a favor, and if you like the show, if you hate my opinions and love Kyle's opinions, go ahead and tell a friend, share the podcast, get the word out by word of mouth. And if you haven't done so yet, go to Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcasting platform and leave us a generous and helpful 5-star rating and review. And all of that is totally free, and you could really help us out, and you can build the community. But if you want to go above and beyond that and support the show monetarily, you can get some fun perks too by heading over to patreon.com/smashingbricks and become a patron for as little as $1 a month. All patrons are going to get early access to the monthly retro pre-play videos. The Fireflower tier will let you choose games that may be played on an upcoming power-up episode. The Tanuki tier will now get you exclusive full-length bonus round episodes at the end of every month, usually related to that month's game, and usually some sort of list or tier maker or something like that that's going to get you a little frustrated with us. And you'll also get ongoing recognition on the show. And then finally, the Starman level can even get you literally on the show with me as a guest. And speaking of that Tanuki recognition, a big thank you goes out to Ms. Muso, who requested this game and is also our first Tanuki level supporter. So thanks, Ms. Muso. Smashing Bricks also has a Discord server for fans, which is, if you don't know, Discord is a free text, voice, and video chat community where you can leave commentary about upcoming and past games and talk about just about anything with the rest of the Brick Smashers out there. Links to everything mentioned, plus Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Twitch can be found in the episode description and at links.smashingbricks.com. That's right, we got the domain name finally. And just like links.smashingbricks.com, you can get to any of our content by using that same formula. youtube.smashingbricks.com, patreon.smashingbricks.com, twitch.smashingbricks.com, instagram.smashingbricks.com, twitter.smashingbricks.com, discord.smashingbricks.com, facebook.smashingbricks.com, and you can access the Smashing Bricks playlist at playlist.smashingbricks.com. And if all those weren't enough, there's one more thing you can do to help the show without spending any money by going to amazon.smashingbricks.com, and that will direct you to Amazon, where you can shop as normal with no difference in cost, but it will be coded with my affiliate link, so I will get a commission on anything you buy. You can support the show without spending an extra penny. I know that's a lot, but now you have very easy access to all of the content of Smashing Bricks, a retro gaming podcast, in a very easy-to-follow format. So I'm real happy about that. As for next episode, I will be joined by Nolan of the New Game Plus podcast. I was a guest on their show a few months back, and he's going to be joining me next month for Silent Hill 2 for the PlayStation 2, and I think possibly the Xbox as well. So get your hands on a copy of that, play along, send in your thoughts, and join us next time on Smashing Bricks. That wraps it up for today. I'm still Eddie Inzauto. That is Kyle Stallock. Thanks, Kyle.
Hi. Bye.
And until next time, may the nostalgia be with you.
Make lightsaber sounds.
Vroom.
Yeah.